Today, Thursday, the International Court of Justice hears Sudan's plea for emergency measures against the UAE to prevent genocidal, ethnic, and sexual violence in which it argues the Emirates are complicit. On the 6th of March, Sudan filed a case against the UAE, accusing it of breaching the Genocide Convention by arming and funding the Rapid Support Forces, or RSF. This image shows RSF leader Hemeti meeting with UAE President Mohammed bin Zayed, symbolizing the controversial partnership at the heart of this trial. Hemeti, or Mohammed Hamdan Dagalo, is the military leader at the head of the paramilitary RSF, one of the two main warring parties in the 2-year conflict that has fueled the world's worst humanitarian crisis in Sudan. Tens, possibly hundreds of thousands dead, the numbers are untraceable, and over 12 million people displaced from their homes. And in Darfur, the RSF is accused of targeted ethnic violence against the non-Arab Masalit population, intended to eliminate the population in what would, of course, amount to genocide if true. The group has also been accused not just by Sudan, but human rights organizations such as the UN and Amnesty International of raping and enslaving women and girls, systematically destroying Sudan's food and safe water production, and summarily executing civilians. In front of the UN's highest court in The Hague today, Thursday, Sudan unequivocally accused the UAE of fueling genocide via illicit gold smuggling and direct military support.
It is an honor to appear before you on behalf of the Sudan to address the facts. As I will explain, including by reference to UN sources, there can be no doubt that the Masalit people is currently being subjected to genocide, and that there is serious evidence that the UAE is failing to prevent this and is complicit.
After describing a crisis marked by ethnic cleansing, mass murder, and sexual violence, Sudan's legal team concluded, firstly, that the RSF and allied militia have committed genocide, that the UAE is supplying weapons used in these crimes, and thirdly, that much of Sudan's gold, which is funding the war, is being smuggled to the UAE to serve this goal. The UAE is set to present its defence in The Hague on Thursday afternoon. When the case was first filed, the UAE diplomatic advisor Anwar Gargash publicly denounced it as farcical in a state-owned newspaper. He called the lawsuit a political game and a publicity stunt, blaming Sudan's military-led government for driving the nation's violence itself. The UAE has also challenged the court's jurisdiction over its actions, and it is yet unclear whether the full case will go ahead in The Hague. But how much weight does this case hold, and even if it triumphs, what power does the ICJ have to enforce any difference? Joining us to answer some questions is Dr. Mohammed Abdel Salam Babekar, an associate professor of law, human rights lawyer, and UN regional expert. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you. You're welcome.
So we have heard Sudan's accusations, UAE complicity in genocide, but the UAE has challenged the court's jurisdiction to hear this case. So how strong is Sudan's case looking from a legal point of view?
Thank you so much. Actually, the issue of the legal issues here, we are talking about 3 main issues. The one is actually called the jurisdiction, and the second one is actually the provisional measures, and the third one is actually the merits of the case. And in terms of legal issues, Sudan is actually has to face the issue of the reservation by the Genocide Convention. Actually, UAE reserved on Article 9 of the Genocide Convention. And actually, UAE in its submission just a few minutes ago said that the court has no jurisdiction to hear the case. And even the lawyers of the UAE mentioned that even the case should not be even in the court list, and provided like case law that the case does not have any jurisdiction to proceed with the case, and also the legal representative of the UAE relied on some cases, like the genocide case, 1951, like Rwanda case, like Yugoslavia case, and all these are established principles with regard to the legality of the case. Sudan provided a different argument regarding the reservation. Sudan said that the reservation are provided by the UAE are different from other reservations adopted by other countries. So here, this is like a lot of legal niceties regarding this issue. And now, in order for the court, for the ICJ to proceed, it has actually to issue a ruling with regard to its jurisdiction. And in legal terms, Sudan, the case cannot be admitted to the court, to the merit stage, unless the court ruled on that issue. And in my view, the issue of legality with regard to the Sudan chance, in my view, I guess the methodology adopted by Sudan is not the right one, because it is in order to avoid any legal challenges, you need to look at the convention as the reservations. Sudan could have actually adopted a different methodology in terms of the violations, not only in Darfur, but in the whole of Sudan, but committed by the RSF. So, for example, there is also other cases like the Nicaragua case that Sudan could actually actually proceed in submit a case related to violation of IHL, like the Geneva Convention and the protocols, not the Genocide Convention, because the Genocide Convention, in terms of the threshold, is very high, because you have to prove intent, and also you have to prove that the UAE is actually aiding and abetting. And this requires a lot of material evidence in order to prove that. So I guess that in terms of legality, it requires a lot of effort. Today, Sudan legal representative made a lot of effort in order to convince the court that the court will have a jurisdiction, and I think it will be like a real battle with regard to the court accepting the case to proceed.
So there are a lot of hurdles before it gets to this stage. But in the meantime, Sudan has called on the ICJ to take emergency action and order the Emirates to prevent genocidal acts on Darfur. Ultimately, they are also calling for the court to determine appropriate compensation if the UAE is found guilty of complicity in genocide. Does the court have the power to enforce these forms of justice? And what would compensation even look like?
Actually, the court would not have any power to enforce any decision unless it passes the issue of jurisdiction. So this is like the court will not go into the merit of the case. The court will not go to discuss to what extent. First of all, you need to prove that genocide has been committed. And second, you need to provide that the UAE aided the RSF. But this stage is not yet there. You have to overcome the issue of jurisdiction, and then you go to the compensation issue, and you go to the merit of the case.
But say we got to that stage. Sorry to interrupt. But say we got to that stage. Say jurisdiction was approved. Is there likely, would there be powers? Would the court have powers to deliver the changes that Sudan is looking for?
Absolutely. If the court proceeds to the merit stage and decides that Sudan RSF committed genocide, which is there's a lot of indications that RSF committed not only genocide but crimes against humanity, war crimes, and then you need to prove the complicity, that's aiding and abetting, and control and finance, and then that UAE failed not only to punish but also to prevent genocide. And if this is approved, then the court has jurisdiction, has the power to issue a ruling with regard to compensation. And there is many cases with regard to compensation issued by the ICJ, the International Court of Justice.
Okay. Now, the UAE is not the only country that Sudan's government has accused, if not legally, unofficially, of supporting the RSF. Kenya and Chad are other examples. Could they be vulnerable to legal action as well?
It is possible in terms of like, with regard to Chad actually it's like Sudan provided that Chad provided support to the RSF through like Jaras and some areas that providing support to these troops by providing the logistical base. This could be regarded as an interference in the sovereign by Chad as against Sudan as a sovereign state. But also this requires that you need to look at the treaties relevant to such kind of allegation against by Chad again by Sudan against Chad, because also both states they have to consent to the court jurisdiction. With regard to Kenya, Kenya is different. Kenya is actually accused by Sudan is actually hosting the rebel groups, the RSF and the new alliance. And this is related to an international law, to an issue related to recognition. It is not related to, which is actually every state has the right to recognize another rebel group. But actually, this is an issue also regarding other interference by Sudan. Sudan make a lot of allegations against Kenya, supporting indirectly the RSF. But from a legal terms, it will be like difficult for Sudan to institute any proceeding unless you have like hardcore evidence.
Okay.
But in terms of international relations, Sudan can actually politically using this case and also against the UAE, the case has ramifications in terms of media, in terms of media messages, in terms of also highlighting the atrocities committed in Sudan.
Yeah.
So from a political perspective, media perspective, there's a lot of messages coming out of this case. But from a legal point of view, there will be a lot of challenges in terms of for the case to move forward.
Yeah, I think that's sort of what I'm hearing, that there are a lot of legal barriers to actual likelihood of legal justice being forced on UAE, or a precedent being set for other countries who may be funding or backing the RSF. But the importance of this case stretches beyond the legal outcome. There is symbolic value, bringing media focus to the plight of the Masalit people, sending a message to the international community. If that is the case, what kind of message is being sent to the international community with this trial?
I think this is a lot of messages for the international community. Actually, Sudan has actually outside the radar for a long time, because it's actually it is like a forgotten crisis, and because of the conflict in Ukraine, the conflict in Gaza. So Sudan is not in the limelight of the media. I'm glad that now the Middle East eye is actually focusing on this case. What happened in Sudan is actually not only the commission of genocide, the commission of war crimes, crimes against humanity, and also the situation amounts to genocide. And this requires even for the ICC jurisdiction to extend to all of Sudan, not only Darfur, because the crimes committed in Sudan by all parties, it is actually heinous, in particular the RSF, with regard to genocide against the Masalit, and also with regard to the war crimes and crimes against humanity committed in other parts of the Sudan, in Khartoum, and also in Jazeera. And this requires a form of accountability beyond the ICJ, because here we are talking about criminality, about international criminal law. We're not talking about the ICJ. We're not talking about the state responsibility. And I hope that there will be an international mechanism. Now we have the fact-finding mission, conducting investigation by the Human Rights Council, and last year the Commission of Inquiry issued its report. There is also a lot of evidence about that violations committed by the RSF and also the army in terms of bombardment. And here you need really an important international focus with regard to accountability, either like a hybrid court for Sudan, or a national process that the Sudan government should be keen and eager to prosecute those who committed crimes, including those from the army. And I hope this will be this will resolve the issue of accountability, the issue of compensation, and the issue of reparation to the victims.
Right, because if we look at the details of this case, the UAE complicity or alleged complicity, it comes down to the arms trade and the gold trade. And that is not just something that implicates the UAE. You know, indirectly, many countries are selling arms to the UAE that could be going into this conflict. And many countries and consumers around the world are buying the gold that is supposedly funding this conflict. My final question then is, how should UAE allies, trade partners, for example, the UK, which is where we're streaming from, and which sells substantial arms to the UAE, how should they respond to the serious accusations that have been made in the court today?
Actually, I'm glad that you brought this point because on the 15th of April, the UK is actually holding a conference on Sudan. The UK is not serious about the violations committed in Sudan. The UK actually puts its interest before human rights. Although the foreign minister went to Chad, to the refugee camps, and talking about Sudan, tried to bring Sudan to the limelight. But it seems that the UK foreign policy is not putting Sudan interest. Particularly Sudan is like a former colonial power. It's putting the business interest of the UK before the victims, the Sudanese victims. In particular, there is obligation not only in the UK but all countries providing support, providing arms. Countries must, under the Genocide Convention, they should not only punish genocide, but actually should act to punish should actually act to prevent the commission of genocide. And as you know, the Sudan conflict has a lot of regional impact. Many actors providing support to each party. And the main victims who are actually bearing the brunt of violations are actually the Sudanese, the civilian populations. And the war will not continue without external support. And I think this is important. I hope external powers, including the UK, they should actually adopt an ethical foreign policy with regard to how to address the root causes of the conflict in Sudan. Not only focusing only on humanitarian assistance, on the symptoms of the conflict. They have to actually address the core and the root causes of the conflict in Sudan.
Dr. Mohammed Abdel Salam Babakar, thank you so much for joining us.
Pleasure. Thank you so much.
Now, before we move on, I want to peel back the legal layer of this story and focus on the human reality behind it, or as Dr. Babakar just pointed out, the real victims of this story. And those are the people who have suffered war in Sudan and are still suffering that war. Earlier, I spoke to a Sudanese activist called Sarah Margani, and here's what she said.
The case against the UAE is deeply personal. For 2 years, we've watched our country be torn apart by a war that's been funded and fueled by foreign powers, especially the UAE. They've armed the RSF, the same militia responsible for mass killings, sexual violence, and the largest displacement crisis in the world right now. We've seen the proof all over social media, and still the UAE denies it and hides behind their power. But this case is Sudan standing up and saying we won't be silenced and we won't let this slide. It's about justice, dignity, and fighting for every life that's been lost.